In Seattle, the police and fire departments have come up with contingency plans due to fears of mass resignations. In California, 52% of highway patrol employees are not vaccinated. That includes civilian staff and officers. In Chicago, vacation requests are now being restricted since half of the police department is not vaccinated. In Baltimore, the union is urging officers not to disclose their vaccination status to city officials, as a mandate there is set to take effect next week. San Jose is allowing unvaccinated officers to remain on the job through the end of the year, with discipline and testing requirements to take effect after that. More than 460 law enforcement officers have died from COVID since the pandemic began. 4 times as many who have died from gun violence during that same period. Just this weekend, President Biden acknowledged how difficult it is to be a police officer these days.
Being a cop today is one hell of a lot harder than it's ever been.
In a moment, retired LA Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey and Scott Erickson, who spent 20 years in law enforcement, join us to talk more about why cities are willing to allow so many officers potentially to walk. But we're going to begin here with NewsNation's Kelly Beeson. She is at the police headquarters in Chicago at this hour, where we're told police are doing just that, in some cases, walking. Kelly?
That's right, Joe. Well, officers who have not complied with the city's vaccination mandate are given one last chance today to do so. And if they do not, they will be stripped of their police powers. Now, to clarify, the requirement is for officers to report their vaccination status. Recently, a memo went out to Chicago police alerting officers that they would be fired if they don't comply with the city's vaccination policy. Police union president, he's been outspoken against this mandated reporting, saying it violates collective bargaining rights. And we caught up with him outside of headquarters moments ago. This is what he had to say to officers and to the public.
Hold the line. Again, remember what matters, because this department doesn't care. And how quickly we forget when you kiss the ring and you become one of the anointed ones, and you're willing to throw everybody else under the bus now for your pension and your paycheck. Shame on every one of them.
Now, 60 officers are expected to be processed here today. It's unclear how many of those officers will not comply with this requirement. We also just received word that after 3:30 Central Time here in Chicago, an officer had been shot and was rushed to a local hospital. No word on their condition.
Right. Kelly, I don't know if you could clarify this, but I'm not quite sure. If they report as unvaccinated, are they fired or are they put on paid leave? What happens if they report as unvaccinated?
If they report as unvaccinated, Joe, it seems that moving forward, they'll be required to be tested twice a week for COVID-19, and that will happen on their own time and at their own expense.
All right, Kelly Beeson in Chicago for us tonight. Thank you, Kelly. So why are so many big cities dug in on this, knowing they could lose maybe hundreds or thousands of officers? Let's ask our friend, retired LAPD Sgt. Cheryl Dorsey and Scott Erickson as well. Sergeant, let's start with you. What do you make of what's happening here and cities willing to just go the distance with this and losing all these officers potentially?
Well, I think it's a game of name that tune in 4 notes or less, right? We'll see what happens, because officers, have due process. They certainly could be in violation. The cities could be in violation of a city charter or the police officer's Bill of Rights to try to compel an officer to have a shot. And I think by and large, officers are bothered by the hypocrisy. Listen, command staff will tell us often to do one thing, and then we see them doing something completely contrary to their edict for us. Here in Los Angeles, our police chief had a video that he put out to the troops demanding that everyone wear their mask at all times. And then when he was seen at a Dodgers game doing what? Not wearing a mask. And so I think it's the hypocrisy that is most bothersome by police officers. And so we'll see. While the term resignation is being used, that was a 22-year veteran who was eligible, I would imagine, for his pension to retire. And so if that's what they want to have officers do who are eligible, we'll see if they can keep up the personnel and the resources that are needed to fight crime on the street.
Right. Scott, who do you think blinks in these big cities?
I would assume that the politicians blink. I would hope that they blink, because right now in America, we're not in a position to lose hundreds or thousands of police officers, especially in our major urban areas that are experiencing dramatic increases in crime. It's interesting. In 2020, every single one of these officers worked 24/7, engaged in hundreds of millions of police-citizen contacts throughout the country, all without the benefit of a vaccine. And last year, we appropriately called them heroes. Now, all of a sudden this year, for people who are refusing or uncomfortable with abiding by a politician's local vaccine mandate, we're now saying that these people may be fired. So it's completely backward thinking. It's not the time to be engaging in this battle of chicken when public safety is at risk.
Sergeant, what happens if these cities lose all these officers? I know in Illinois, I've heard that there's talk of bringing in the National Guard. What's the situation in LA right now?
Well, listen, what will ultimately happen is that the community will suffer because crime will go up. People will be victimized. I mean, let's not pretend that there isn't a segment of society out there who would like there to be fewer police. And those are the people that are preying on innocence. And so we'll have to wait and see. Bring in the National Guard. Are you going to do that across 18,000 police departments? Because that's how many there are in these United States. And so I think that at the end of the day, these administrators and these politicians will blink. They cannot afford, by attrition, resignations, retirements, or just the inability to hire folks, to have the numbers depleted.
Scott, I realize that this is not necessarily their choice, but do police take a chance of losing the public if, in fact, they walk off by the hundreds or thousands and crime does even go higher?
Well, I don't know if they have a chance of losing the public's in terms of where the public views this. The bottom line is this. The vaccines are very effective, but you're not going to be able to berate people into getting them through these mandates and through disciplinary action or threats of disciplinary action if they don't comply. What politicians should be doing is encouraging people with consistent rhetoric, consistent messaging, so that people will voluntarily get the vaccine. It's the right thing to do.
Sergeant, I guess I'm also confused because there really isn't a mandate. I mean, the president has said there's a mandate, but there's a question as to whether OSHA is involved in this. And I know in Oregon, there was a situation where they were mandating police officers to get the vaccine, and then they changed it because it wasn't compliant with state or federal mandates. Is there a mandate forcing cities to do this?
I don't believe that you can mandate someone to put something in their body that they don't want to put in there. And what kind of liability would a city have if someone has an adverse reaction to being forced to get this shot, any version of it, take a pill, whatever you want to call it? And are you really going to tax the officers with getting these tests on their own time and at their own expense? I think it's a threat, and we'll have to see whether or not these police agencies really follow through and how effective and sustainable it is.
Scott, the sergeant mentioned hypocrisy. I'd like to get you on it because we mentioned in the open that 460 law officers have died since the pandemic began. I guess there are people, I'm sure, wondering why officers are so hesitant, or so many of them anyway, to get the vaccine.
We don't know. And I think the bottom line is any type of medical decision is a personal decision between an individual and their doctor. And so there's no way of understanding why a particular officer or a group of officers may feel uncomfortable in getting the vaccine. Again, I'll say it, I think the development of the COVID-19 vaccine last year, from the onset of the novel coronavirus to the development and the distribution of the vaccine, was a remarkable feat. And we should all be proud of what we accomplished, what was accomplished. I support the idea of people getting the vaccine. But we don't know why people have individual concerns or issues, and we shouldn't try to assume that we do know.
Sergeant, to give you the last word, we have 10 seconds. How does this end?
Well, it'll end when it ends. And while we know that 400 officers died, we really don't know why they died. And so statistics can be manipulated. We'll have to wait and see.
We will. Cheryl Dorsey, retired LAPD Sergeant, and Scott Erickson, great to have you both with us tonight. Appreciate the time.